Yes, it's 900 hours. A very good morning to each and every one of our viewers at home, and thank you so much for joining us for yet another exciting edition of your favorite program, Media Monitor, your 1-hour news analysis show, and you're joining us live here on the SABC News channel with myself, Alicia Jali. Our discussions today focus on the very latest from the DA, as of course the former party leader Hellen Zille was suspended from all party activities this past week. We get to scrutinize the damage that the leaked emails have done to President Jacob Zuma's legacy, and we ask the question, will he be able to finish his term in office? Find out more later on in the show. Now, how will the recession actually affect you? We do have Dr. Azzajamin on that topic, and later on in the program we talk to SABC foreign editor Sophie Mokoena, who will brief us on the NC's discussion documents. But before we engage with our panel for all of that, it's 9 o'clock. It's time for the news headlines. Most of the fires in the Nelson Mandela Metro are said to be contained, although a fire is still raging at Woodridge on the outskirts of Port Elizabeth, where 70% of the school was destroyed. Another fire in the Elands River area is also still ablaze, and a wind of up to 20 kilometers an hour is expected today compared to the 50 kilometers an hour yesterday. Electricity cuts have also been experienced in some areas of Uitenhage, Dispatch as well as Port Elizabeth. The public has been urged to use water sparingly while firefighters continue to monitor the flare-ups. President Jacob Zuma has sent condolences to the people and government of Namibia on the death of struggle activist Herman Adimba Toivo. He died in Windhoek on Friday at the age of 93. Toivo will be buried tomorrow in the capital. He was a co-founder of the South West African People's Organization, or SWAPO, which is still the governing party out in Namibia. He was one of the 36 Namibians to be arrested by the South African Apartheid Security Forces on terrorism charges back in 1966 and spent 16 years on Robben Island. After Namibia's independence in 1990, he then became a cabinet minister in the SWAPO government. And in some turnaround and good news in the sporting front, South Africa recorded their first ever competitive victory over Nigeria on Saturday, winning in a 2019 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier in Uyo 2-0. Nigeria and South Africa had clashed 12 times before, during which time Bafana Bafana's only victory was a friendly 13 years ago. Nigeria had created several chances, however, Stuart Baxter's men held firm to collect all 3 points for victory. All right, let's welcome our guest this morning. We're pleased to welcome here with me SABC multimedia producer, Mr. Tsepiso Moshe. Tsepiso, good morning.
Thanks for having me, Alicia.
All right, before you give us the hashtag, let's say hello to our main panel there. We do have political analyst, Mr. Dumisani Hlope, political analyst of UNISA School of Governance, Mr. Levi Ndo, and of course, in our Pretoria studios, we're very pleased to be joined by Mr. Joe Mavuso. Gentlemen in studio, a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Good morning. All right, let's say good morning to Mr. Mavuso in Pretoria. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning to you and to all viewers out there.
All right, thank you for joining us, Joe. We're going to get into our heated discussion, but before all of that, Tsepiso, take it away. What was the biggest hashtag of this week?
Alicia, one of the biggest hashtags this week was the recession, and this comes after Stats SA announced that the country has slipped into a technical recession. Now, Alicia, that got many people angry on social media, some of them blaming the current leadership in ANC, saying we are where we are today because of the current leadership. Some are blaming Minister of Water and Sanitation, Minister Nomvula Mokonyane, is saying it's comments like hers that are affecting the economy, saying if the rent falls, they will simply pick it up. And as you can see here on Twitter, the first tweet saying, I did say that in 2017 we will enter a recession. There is no leadership here.
And Gabriel says so. South Africa is officially in recession thanks to @myNC. When will they wake up?
Yes, and this one with a meme of Pravin Gordhan.
He looks very shocked there.
He looks
very, very shocked. And it's KK, you see there saying,
saying lesson learned, terrible leadership leads to recession.
Do we have any more memes?
Yes, we do. If you scroll
Let's
further
scroll up and see what does that mean. What is he doing?
He's looking at South Africans reacting to news that the country has slipped into recession.
Gentlemen, I want to hear your views. Dumsani, let's start with you. What did you make of the social media reaction to the recession?
I think it was spot on because the woes of our economy is political leadership. It's not the economy itself, but not political leadership, the lack of political leadership.
Levi?
Well, these are quite difficult times. As Dumsani has indicated, it's not only about the economy, it's about the people that are responsible to take South Africa to great heights.
All right, let's move on to the next big hashtag and then we'll get something from Joe there. What was the next big hashtag for this?
Our biggest hashtag this week again was the Knysna fire. This week, even today, Alicia, Knysna has been battling fires throughout the week. And as you can see here, the first picture here, it says Knysna has been declared a disaster area. What we ask that residents please stay safe and away from any fires. Hashtag Knysna fire.
All right, and Carmen 3 says, my heart is breaking for Knysna and everyone and everything there. Hashtag the Knysna fires. Let's take another tweet there, Tsipis.
This one is at Pick n Pay donating 100,000 to Knysna fire relief. You can drop donations in mud trolleys at Western Cape stores or online.
And Vina is off. He says, I feel for everyone affected by the Knysna fire. Very interesting to see that the whole community has actually taken a stand to try and do that little that they can do to try and help those individuals. Mr. Mavoso, what do you make about the recent fires and, I mean, the terrible weather out in the Cape?
Oh, yes. Condolences to the people who lost lives and property in that area. This is a real disaster. It has never happened that in 1 week an area or province can have such a storm weather and the next thing there's fires raging. This is really natural disaster. We can't fault anyone nor complain to the Almighty, but just pray that some comfort comes out, and it is up to us to assist those who are left behind and try to in any way make their lives comfortable.
Gentlemen, let's talk about the way that social media reacted to this and also in assisting and posting pictures and warning people to not go to certain areas. I think that was a good call. What do you think, Levi?
Well, two extremes in the Cape Province. You know, you had those thunderstorms after a very, very long drought. And in the last few days now is the fire. I mean, if it's fire and thunderstorms, these are two separate things, but they're actually happening at the same place. But you know, the support from different sectors of society really is quite remarkable.
He doesn't think it's witchcraft.
You should add Helen Zille as part of the story.
We'll leave it there, Dumsani. Let's wrap up this digital segment very quickly, Tsepi. So before Dumsani says something, what is this that we're looking at?
The final one was
the
Gupta email. So on Thursday, EFF leader Julius Malema held a media briefing in Braamfontein, making another revelations in relation to the Gupta email. Saying,
I love the memes you bring us. Absolutely stunning, Tsepi. So you bring such humor to the show. Kwanele Zimele Julie there says at hashtag EFF Presser, hashtag Malema, some of the NC members linked to hashtag Gupta emails feel like doing this to Malema, gagging him. More memes coming through. What are we looking at now?
This one from Kramko saying, Malema, we must give him a name. He is the Minister of Dropping Files. Here Malema says the EFF is working on getting camera footage of the president on the streets of the Gupta house in Dubai. Files EFF.
And more memes following. Original Raymond says at my NC MPs are like this after hashtag Julius Malema says there is cameras in every street of Dubai. A very quick one, Dumsani.
Look, the interesting thing about what Julius says about the ANC is that he gets it from the ANC. So this is why he's always correct. Because in their own squabbles within the ANC, someone decides that is going to leak information and they become that player in that regard. So So whatever I say, there are very strong possibilities that he's very correct in what he said.
All right, Tepi, so thank you so much for joining us. A very quick one before you go. Just give our viewers a quick URL for those stories before we get on to our next story.
Alicia, viewers at home can catch this show and other shows on our YouTube channel by simply searching for SABC Digital News, or alternatively, they can visit www.sabc.co.za/news.
Thank you so much, Tepi. So we're going to see you very soon. Let's look at another story that hogged the digital front this week. Of course, the Constitutional Court has ruled in favor of former Communications Minister Faith Muthambi in a judgment that favors the non-encryption for government-subsidized set-top boxes, or STBs. Now, the Con Court upheld the appeal by Muthambi against last year's judgment of the Supreme Court of Appeal, which had ruled in favor of encrypted decoders. Muthambi, the SABC and Mnet then filed applications with the Con Court for leave to appeal the SCA ruling, and the applications were opposed by ETV and others, including, of course, SOS Support, Public Broadcasting Coalition and Media Monitoring Africa. ETV, SOS Support, Public Broadcasting Coalition and Media Monitoring Africa are to pay the costs of Mnet in this court, including the costs of the two councils. South Africa has been planning for digital migration since 2008, but of course we all know that we missed the June 2015 deadline to switch from analog to digital terrestrial television, or DTT. Gentlemen, what do you think about this? Let's start with you, Dumsan.
Well, the interesting, I think the biggest thing is that it's good for government, because government hardly wins, court cases,
Yeah.
So for this time around, it was interesting that the government won. So congratulations to Minister Faith Muthambi. But what's also interesting is how the media, during the week, they reported on this. Most of the media said that Constitutional Court sides with Faith Muthambi, rather than saying that Faith Muthambi wins, the case. Now, those are two different things.
Yeah.
When you say it sides, it means that it's being subjective. But if you say that, she has won the case,
the appeal, yeah.
which she did, it means that, whatever she said, it was actually correct. So I found that anomaly
very interesting point
yeah.
that you bring up there, Dumsan. What do you think about this issue, Levi?
There has been a general view out there that seeks to suggest that the courts are always against government. And most people will actually say that each time government goes to court, they won't make it. But I think at this stage, once in numerous occasions, the decision has been taken in favor of government. But I think also you could sense, even in the sentiments by Minister Muthambi, that the department was quite sure of their story. Hence, one is not surprised by the decision that's coming from the courts.
Very interesting. Let's take a quick ad break, and after that, we're going to take a look at the recent happenings as DA leader Hellen Zille was officially suspended from all DA activities this past week. It's all coming up after this short break. You don't want to miss it.
Hindu devotees took a holy dip at Sangam, the confluence of rivers Ganges. People and priests made their way to the banks before the break of dawn. Security arrangements were in place for police forces patrolling on the river banks to ensure smooth functioning of the event.
A mobile museum in India's West Mumbai is highlighting the skills and creativity of residents of one of Asia's largest slums.
That's what we've been doing here, is creating this platform, and we came here to help it develop and to, just build it up.
Welcome back to Media Monitor. Former DA leader Helen Zille was officially suspended from all DA party activities this past week. We unpack all of this right after this break. All right, so let's go on to that story. Let's have a look at that package for Helen Zille.
Zille arrived in high spirits at the hearing this morning. What landed her in hot water centered on tweets on colonialism. She expressed concern at the process followed by the party's federal executive in bringing her to book.
You can't punish people before they have a trial. That's basic constitutional law.
The hearing set to resolve technical issues and timelines. It resolved there will be a confidentiality agreement signed by next Wednesday. Documents must be exchanged by the 23rd of June, and a pre-trial conference will be held on the 30th of June.
Well, today we were dealing with logistics, and I am entirely happy with the process as it's unfolded so far.
It went entirely as planned. It was merely to set timelines and dates for certain events that have to take place before the trial actually starts. So we've set a date for signing of the confidentiality agreement, which would be by the end of business next Wednesday.
Pressure is mounting for Zille to resign as Western Cape Premier, but she refuses, saying she has not broken her oath of office. The EFF said it's close to pulling out on working agreements at municipalities where the EFF and the DA co-govern if Zille was not removed. Meanwhile, the actual disciplinary hearing date for Zille will be determined after the pre-trial conference. Ulelani Philip, SABC News, Parliament.
Oh, very interesting, gentlemen, that Tony Leon has actually called for Zille to vacate her position as Premier. I think resounding the call by Julius Malema to say, otherwise we're putting our support back. How do you think this is going to affect those dynamics?
Well, number one, I think let's correct something. She has not been suspended from all DA activities because she's a Premier of the Western Cape on a DA ticket.
Yeah.
So it's just fallacious that she's been suspended from all DA party activity. As long as she's a Premier on a DA ticket, she is executing DA
That's
activities.
what somebody was saying, because,
yes.
I mean, how exactly is she then executing the decisions that, are made
she's
at the...
She's not a Premier on her own.
Yeah.
She's a Premier because of the DA. So we must crush that all DA activity. But for me, it's not so much what Malema or says, but it's what this struggle in the DA represents. DA is a liberal white political party. So Helen Zille represents that constituency. Musime Mane comes in as this black guy, but he represents, let me call a group which may be called, Africanist, for lack of a better term. But they are there because they want to ascend into higher positions, within the DA. So it's not an ideological issue. So what Helen Zille and her group are saying is that Muslim Imani, you are here, we are hosting you. You are not necessarily part of us. So that's the struggle. That's what the struggle is all about.
That's very concerning, Dumsani. What do you think, Levi?
Well, indeed it's true that Helen Zille is not wholly suspended from the activities of the DA.
We accept that now.
Yes, but the Democratic Alliance is supposed to be consistent. Yeah. Because those who are coming with a view that says that she must actually vacate a position has to look at what actually happened to other people who behaved in the same manner that Helen Zille has behaved. There is an MP that was only fined 20,000 rands and still continued with the ticket of the DA in Parliament. So if you have to be consistent as the DA, you cannot say, let's remove Helen Zille and then she must vacate her office, because you will then not be treating members of the same party equally. It also depends on what the Democratic Alliance wants to be perceived out there in public. They wouldn't want to be seen as a party that is lenient to racists. But also at the same time, they've got a trend of that leniency with racists. And that is why they cannot just easily remove Helen Zille from the Premier position. And she'll have all the facts available to say, this is how you treated other members within the DA. Why are you then treating me differently? But also at the same time, there is pressure that must come from the EFF. Because the EFF has supported the DA in a number of municipalities.
Yeah,
and because of that relationship,
Yeah.
The EFF has an influence on the decisions that must be taken by the Democratic Alliance. And the D8 wouldn't love to lose leadership of the different metros. Otherwise, it will be a disaster for the Democratic
Look,
Alliance.
let's hear from...
the stance as well. So the stance that the DA has taken on the ANC president, which is very...
It's a bit hypocritical.
Yeah, so Hellen Zille is actually the JZ of the DA.
Let's find out from Mr. Mavuso what he thinks. Joe, what do you think about this whole debacle? Dumsani seems to think that Mmusi Maimane is barely a guest, is merely a guest in his own party.
Well, I think this is an opportunity, therefore, for Mmusi Maimane to begin to prove himself on his leadership ability and manage this thing very well. So far, we are going to go ahead with his weight to say Ms. Helen Zille has been suspended from all activities. And I would like them to stick to the all. Because the next step is if Helen Zille continues in the legislature of the Western Cape on her own, with whoever leadership or that is there as MECs, she's going to be isolated. She's not going to get any briefing or authority from the party. Therefore, that's an opportunity for vote of no confidence. And there's an opportunity of her being under pressure to say, I can't lead on my own. I'm not here as Helen Zille. I'm here on the ticket of the party. And therefore, either she's with the party or she's out.
Mr. Mavuso, what do you make of her crying foul to the actual process that was conducted to suspend her? I mean, she's saying that the proper process was not followed in having her suspended. And we all saw that whole confusing story with the differing statements in the media from Mmusi Maimane, and then it was later retracted by the actual DA.
It seems, I think there was a mess up in that process of handling. And I think it tells us that there is a certain group within the DA and that is surrounding Mmusi Maimane that were in a hurry to begin to act on the suspension. However, according to the explanation from Mr. J himself, is that the letter was dispensed even before it could reach Ms. Zille, then the announcement was done. However, those are technicalities that I think the party have learned a lesson how to manage the process. Because Ms. Zille is a well-seasoned politician within the DA. She knows how to handle these processes, and therefore she cannot be taken for granted nor faulted. Mr. Maimane needed to be very, very sure of what she's doing, together with those who are supporting him when they tackle a person of Ms. Zille's caliber. She's quite good, and she knows what she's doing. She knows her rights. I think that is not that much to decide on the fact of the tweets that she has done. It's just these are just process technicalities, administrative blunders that can be managed within the party. The bigger fish is the hearing itself.
Yeah. You know, this brings another big question now that Joe is raising. This issue of rights versus principles. Because he's saying, yes, I mean, she has every right to say, no, my rights were not respected, so therefore I'm not going to resign. But now what about the principle? Because people are saying for good governance, she should just step down.
Yeah, look, for me, she's just chickening out, for lack of a better term. This is a leadership issue. She is being charged for bringing the DA into disrepute. That's what she should be focusing on. I see, you know, these issues of processes and systems and all of that, they are just like that. It's a defense mechanism. What she should be articulating herself on is on issues of leadership, of ensuring that the DA is in a good standing, you know, within society.
So are we saying this has then put some divisions within the party? Is that what we're saying, Levi?
Well, there are two things that we need to look at quickly. There is a difference between the court appearance and the disciplinary hearing. When you go and appear in the disciplinary hearing, already you're guilty. Hence, it's a disciplinary committee. You only appear there to be disciplined. Now, that is why, if in the interest of the party and in their own interest, the best thing will be to apologize and say, let's move forward. But you in a court of law, the lawyers would say, you innocent until proven guilty. But that's not the case with the disciplinary committee.
All right. Well, we're going to leave it there. It's a catch-22 situation. More Media Monitor is coming up after this.
Today on Rights and Recourse, we will unpack the new transitional court bill.
The idea of the bill is not to overregulate, to basically set the principles.
The most important aspect of this bill is that it understands that customary law by its nature is consensual, that I have a right to affiliate, I have a right therefore to opt in, and I have a right to opt out.
The opt-out provision is basically one that you've got to respect the court in the sense of if you've been summoned, you've got to tell the clerk of the court at least that you're not willing to attend.
The challenge that I would like to throw to the Department of Justice, it has to come up with mechanisms of ensuring that people who exercise their right to opt out or to opt in are not in any way victimized.
Hashtag Rights with Dumila Mates on legal issues every Sunday at 2 o'clock Central African Time.
Welcome back. Well, the spy tape saga is back in court. Last year, the North Gauteng High Court ruled that President Jacob Zuma should face the charges of fraud, racketeering and corruption. However, Zuma and the NPA are now trying to challenge that decision in the Supreme Court of Appeal. Meanwhile, NC Secretary General Gwede Mantashe pronounced arguments for not removing President Zuma from office, saying the only option was to retain him until, of course, the party's December elective conference to avoid a split. Meanwhile, this week, the MK Military Veterans Associations also called the Umkhonto weSizwe MK Council immature after an announcement by the latter that they will be boycotting the ANC's policy conference. And on the other hand, former ANC Treasurer General and presidential hopeful Matthews Phosa has called the scandal around President Jacob Zuma and the Gupta family the worst crime since apartheid. Let's find out more on this insert.
Let's dare do that. We'll tear the movement apart. We'll have instant satisfaction and happiness, but it will take us much longer to pick up the pieces of the movement. We must not be adventurous in dealing with this issue and plunge ourselves into a chaos. And if we do that, everybody will clap for us, everybody will be happy for us, but the movement will be teared apart immediately. Now, and the formation of Hope Comrades, which we saw when we recall President Thabo Mbeki, will be like a Sunday picnic. Now, therefore, the option we opted for was for a successful conference in December and engage in discussion that will help us reinstill confidence in the movement, elect a leadership in December that will still instill confidence of society.
Joe, what do you make of the latest move by Zuma and the NPA? Do you think we're finally going to see President Jacob Zuma going on trial for this?
I think eventually, yes. And this will be a good opportunity for the ANC, for the president, and for the whole country into now revealing actually what is contained in this in the tapes, and how then can the president begin either to clear his name and allow him space either to continue to be the leader of the ANC and the head of the state in South Africa, because at the moment this is a dark cloud hanging over his head. There are doubts about what has gone behind the decision in order to withdraw the cases that he was facing. And we cannot move on as a country. The ANC cannot move on as a movement. So yes, let it come before the independent judges and let them give us a direction in this case.
Gentlemen, Levi?
There was a time in which President Zuma was saying that he will need his day in court. But now that they remember that there was a huge struggle to get the tapes, especially by the DA.
Yeah.
And it took a very, very long time. And there are those who are saying that why celebrate getting the tapes that have been kept for a very, very long time? Maybe some of the information has been removed. But I think there has to be some form of closure in this matter, because there is always this cloud that is hanging over President Zuma about these tapes.
So we need answers.
We really need answers as South African citizens. This matter has been dragging for a very, very long time, and there has been some people from other sectors that were saying that the NPA is compromised because it's actually taking sides. And if you now talk about an independent judge, I think that's the way to go, wherein we are actually going to get all the necessary information, and we need impartiality so that everybody will end up saying that indeed there has been justice in this case.
Well, I think this manifests the basic fact that the biggest problem of the ANC is the ANC itself. It's not EFF, it's not the DA, but the failure by the leadership of the ANC to undertake political risk assessment and internal political management. So if you look into the policy documents, for example, they talk about everything else except internal political challenges. And that's a leadership issue. And this is the manifestation of that failure.
Are we going back there now, Tumsani?
Well, you know,
the policy discussion documents.
We can't avoid it, because that's supposed to determine the way forward for the ANC, but it's not dealing with what white people call the elephant in the room. Interestingly, by the way, the ANC has a structure called the Integrity Committee.
Yeah.
Which does anything else except integrity of the organization.
Let's talk about something else now. I mean, we do know that there's big problems with the alliance partners. COSATU and the SACP have publicly gone on record saying that they no longer have confidence in President Zuma. Do you think, Joe, that there's still a future then for this alliance, particularly as we march to the 2019 polls?
Yes, I think the pronouncements by the alliance begins to weaken the alliance itself, and it tells a story that the center is no longer holding within the movement. I mean, the ANC is the leader of the alliance in the true sense of the word. So when they cast such doubt into the whole relationship, it means the other alliance members, they also bring something to the party, and we know largely it is the vote. And that is very important for the ANC to begin to hold power. So when they are doubting that, it means there's no guarantee for the next elections that the ANC will be a strong vote for them. That is the case that when before the December conference, the alliance needs to come together and sort out. But like it has been said, the big elephant in the room is what they need to deal with, and those are internal processes. If they go to December, have not met and iron out this, therefore that spells bad omen for the ruling party in our country.
Still on that, I mean, three of the 5 top leaders of the Umkhonto weSizwe Military Veterans Association have disassociated themselves from the party's upcoming national conference that will be taking place in Boksburg. Levi, what do we say to that then?
Well, it's part of the affections within the ANC.
They're getting deeper, it seems.
It also, well, indeed, it even went deeper, even to the MKVA. But one of the questions we need to ask is whether the MKVA it's relevant today. I think that will be a question that has to be answered some other time. But if you go back to the alliance, there is an element within COSATU and the SACP to isolate President Zuma from the alliance and the ANC. They are saying that they would accept other members of the ANC except President Zuma. And if you recall, when the ANC didn't perform well in the local government elections, they made a pronouncement to say we take collective responsibility. And members of the alliance are saying, no, it's not collective responsibility. They're actually trying to isolate President Zuma from the other members of the ANC, because the fight to remove President Zuma, or the voice to remove President Zuma, is getting louder and louder. It is there within the ANC, it's there within the alliance. And I think they're actually trying to say the alliance can still continue, but we don't want President Zuma to remain as the president of the ANC.
So now who should be the voice of reason and iron everything out, and how should they go about doing that very quickly?
Well, the interesting part for me is that the historical liberation capital of the ANC is that it is the leader of society.
Absolutely.
And institutionally, it is the leader of the tripartite alliance. So once you have the key partners within that tripartite alliance is saying that we don't recognize the president, it historically means the ANC has lost that status of being the leader of society. So that, I think for me, that's the most, horrible thing, that, you will have the ANC being dethroned from being the leader of society through its president. That's horrible, yeah.
All right, well, that's where we're going to leave it on that discussion. Let's take a quick ad break, and we'll have more Media Monitor after this break.
Water-wise, water is an essential need. The scarcity of it could lead to loss of many lives, including livestock, plants, and much more. It requires us to use it sparingly and responsibly in times of need, failing which our taps and sanitation will not function. For more on water and weather issues, stay tuned to News Today, every Friday at 4:45 Central African Time. SABC News, making you water-wise.
If we can join our hands together against the ills of our society, we can build a better nation. One youth, one South Africa.
Welcome back to Media Monitor. The ANC will today launch the policy document on their international relations. And for more on that, let's cross live to our foreign editor, Sophie Mokoena, who's out at Luthuli House. A very good morning to you, Sophie. So what can we expect? A very interesting aspect of the policy discussion documents. Tell us what we can expect from this briefing.
Well, indeed, Alicia, we're coming live from Luthuli House, where we expect a committee on international relations to take us through the ANC proposal in terms of what needs to be happen at the international level. But we are not expecting lots of changes. It is a standard practice that the ANC will continue with the current international relation policy. But it comes at a time where internationally the global politics are changing. You are aware that in Europe in particular, the right-wing phenomena is gaining traction. But unfortunately, or fortunately, in Europe there is a pushback. We saw what happened during the elections in France, where Macron won the election when people were expecting Marine Le Pen to win. Last week we saw what happened in Great Britain or United Kingdom, where people were expecting that the current Prime Minister will win. But unfortunately, she did manage to win, but not with a decisive margin. And therefore, it speaks to people trying to push back. We saw what happened. Jeremy Corbyn, a socialist, making inroads when people were expecting that this was the end of the Socialist Party. Therefore, we want to see whether the ANC will be looking at these developments internationally, but also the voice from the continent, people saying that this is perhaps the time where Africa can be a voice of reason and position itself as an alternative voice. But unfortunately, the ruling party, in government in particular, which is supposed to do that, is currently facing challenges. So we'll see whether they are up to the task in terms of studying this balance of forces properly.
All right, and Sophie, just to wrap up, I know that we know that the late Namibian minister Ya Toiva has actually passed on. Is there anything that they're going to be talking about in relation to his death at this discussion documents, policy discussion documents briefing today?
I expect Me'et Namolewa to comment on the elections in the United Kingdom comment on the elections in Lesotho, but also a message of condolence to the Namibian people. But with me, I have the Secretary General of the ANC, Ntate Kwete Mantashe, to talk to us about the passing on of this stalwart. Ntate Mantashe, dumela.
Dumela Mesove.
Nipilele baba.
Sipilele ninjani.
The passing on of Toivo, a great loss to the Namibian people, but he had a good relations with the ANC as well.
Adimba Toivo is an internationalist. He's not just a national leader in Namibia, he is an internationalist. He is, he spent a lot of time in Robben Island. So he is part of us. We are passing our condolences to the people of Namibia, to SWAPO in particular, and to the family, Toivo family, that Toivo has grown. The age was advanced, so when you grow to that age, it is not a curse, it is a blessing. So I don't think we should mourn, we should celebrate the life of Toivo. Toivo has made his contribution. We are free, Namibia is free.
His passing on comes at a time where the Liberation Organization in the region in particular, all the organizations are facing challenges. What can the organizations learn from his leadership during challenging times?
Fortunately, SWAPO is quite strong. We are going through our own difficult times. We can learn from them. That's why we're having a movement of liberation movements in the region. We share experiences. We'll continue doing that. We'll try to celebrate his legacy and actually sustain it. That's what we're going to do. Because internationalism is not a luxury. It's what is about. It is about solidarity, where you feel the same pain as your sister party, and where they feel the same pain when we are going through troubles. And I think we're going to come back. I think the ANC is already clawing back the lost ground. We're talking to the people, but as we claw back, sometimes another mistake is committed. We claw back, another mistake is committed. But I think we'll come back and be a strong movement alongside SWAPO, which is our sister movement. We fought the same enemy. We were actually colonized. They were colonized by the Germans, we were colonized by the Dutch and the English, but ultimately we were both administered by apartheid government.
And finally, the elections in Lesotho and then United Kingdom, Jeremy Corbyn, the socialist?
In Lesotho, I think we must congratulate Comrade Tabane for coming back so strong. And hope that there will be stability in Lesotho. The problem with Lesotho is that when there are problems in Lesotho, South Africa feels it directly. We don't research it. You meet that crisis in the streets of Bloemfontein, in the streets of Johannesburg, and you know that there is a problem in Lesotho. We're hoping that stability will come back to Lesotho. We must strengthen our relationship with them. In UK, I'm sorry that the Labour Party didn't take over governance. It's a sister party in the Socialist International. They should have won, but I think Corbyn has done well. Gaining 29 seats is not small. Is a real serious comeback, particularly when everybody thought that left politics are out of date, and therefore they will not. And young people are beginning to appreciate that left politics have resonance with the current problems.
Thank you for your time, Tate Mantashe.
Thank you, Kelly.
That was the ANC Secretary General, Kwete Mantashe, talking to us about international issues. Over to you in studio.
Thank you so much to our foreign editor there, Sophie Mokoena, and she is live to us from, of course, Luthuli House. Let's take a quick ad break now. We will be getting more from Luthuli House on the next bulletin at 10 o'clock. We have the recession discussion shortly after this. You don't want to miss it.
goes. He's still going. He popped it up. He circled Peterson. Easy as that. What a response it is from the Cheetahs. Brilliant score.
Imran Tahir produced a superb performance with the ball. The Proteas leg spinner put his side in the driving seat, scalping 3 wickets for just 18 runs.
Gifton Gope is flying toward third, and he is there with a triple, his first in the big leagues.
It is a Ferrari front row lockout, unless Hamilton can get on pole, and he can't. Ferrari, for the first time since France in 2008, have locked out the front row.
For all your sports news, keep it locked to Sports Live every Saturday and Sunday from 20:30.
And the big shock of this week, earlier in this week, Stats South Africa announced that South Africa has slipped into a technical recession, the second economic depression post-democracy. Now, this comes after the GDP declined 0.7% during the first quarter of this year, after contracting by 0.3% in the fourth quarter of 2016. To explain this further, we are joined by Dr. Azza Jamin. Doctor, a very good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
All right, before we talk to you, Doctor, let's have a look at this info package.
Low confidence levels mean investors locally and internationally are staying away from investing in the economy. This translates to even less jobs created and impacts on consumer confidence levels. There is fear that there could be further weakness going forward as the GDP figures reflect the conditions in the first quarter before the downgrades to junk status. Some economists say the problems South Africa is facing are mostly self-created.
Domestic factors around political confidence, political stability. We've seen what has been going around in terms of our political structure. Certainly we know that worries a lot of people, both South Africans and international investors.
Consumers are advised to tighten their belts to make it out of the recession unscathed.
There are a number of things on the expenditure side. Wherever you can avoid getting debt or adding to your borrowing, you need to definitely pull back. All the unnecessary expenditure, luxuries, and luxury is a relative thing, I must emphasize. Those things need to be contained. And very importantly, look at opportunities that you can be productive, that you can be entrepreneurial. No matter how incremental, how small it is, in the tough times that are prevailing and in the time that may come, those additional entrepreneurial productive sources of income are going to help out. So I think losing hope is the last thing that we should do.
Economists say to get out of a recession, we need to build up confidence as a matter of urgency. Gloria Sofakomosi, SABC News, Johannesburg.
All I heard from that analyst was that all luxuries need to be scrapped away, Doctor. What is a technical recession?
A technical recession is officially 2 successive quarters of declining economic activity. Why it's called a technical recession? Because if it's 1 quarter, there can be some factors that interfere, seasonal. There can be a strike or something. It doesn't which depresses economic activity. It is not necessarily a fundamental decline in the overall level of economic activity. But if you carry on for 6 months, then you can pretty well say that the economy is actually in decline.
But what would you say contributed to this decline of economic growth, Doctor? I mean, we've also seen the recent downgrades. One would say, geez, can't we have a break and a breather?
Unfortunately, no. You know that the figures that were released this week came largely prior to the cabinet reshuffle. The downgrades took place on the 3rd of April.
Just a day after,
so we still have to see the effects of the downgrades. Having said that, I'm not entirely happy with the statistical adjustment for seasonal factors that is incorporated into these numbers.
Why not?
Both in the United States and in South Africa, we have noted in the recent few years that first quarter figures are notoriously very bad. And I don't think that, seasonal adjustment is supposed to get rid of those seasonal factors. And I'm not convinced that it's done so.
But I mean, Doctor, didn't we meet the projected growth of 0.3% in the first quarter of 2017?
No, we met the 0.3% was the growth in 2016.
In 2016.
And what this suggests is that we're doing worse than that.
My
even.
goodness.
At a time when we were hoping that we were actually doing better because agriculture and mining are recovering. Last year was awful because of the drought, and then mining had its own.
So what are the driving factors then, Doctor?
Just a general loss of confidence. The political machinations that your colleagues have been commenting upon in the last year has just sapped the confidence of consumers and businesses alike. Consumers are too scared to spend and to borrow, especially to spend, because they fear they may lose their jobs. And businesses are too scared to invest. They'd rather keep the cash and either invest abroad or make sure that their local business still survives a very weak environment. And the combination of these is just causing further... And over and above that, you've got government that is now also limiting its expenditure because it needs to bring down the budget deficit to please the ratings agencies. So it's a total combination of these.
But now, Doctor, let's look on the positive note. The current reforms that have been put down to try and you know, encourage economic growth and put us back to even investment grade. Do you think these are going to be enough to get us out of this recession? And after how long are we going to be able to get out of this recession?
I'd like to ask you what the reforms are in the first instance. There are some fundamental weaknesses in the economy at the moment.
So those need to be revisited
Those need to be revisited. The National Development Plan, to give it its due, actually tried to address those, but it was rejected by half of the ANC. And so we have a complete economic policy divide within the ruling party, so we don't actually make any progress to sort out those problems.
Doctor, how long or how soon do you think, or can you project that we're going to be able to get out of this recession period?
Out of recession officially, there is still hope that we could get out of it in the second half of this year because the rest of the world is doing quite reasonably well.
So it's not
and that
bad.
might help our projections. But there is still so much uncertainty ahead of the December electoral conference. The confidence levels are going to be so low that I wouldn't necessarily bank on that.
And your advice to our consumers to try and, you know, stick with the times of a recession and it
unfortunately, consumers need to conserve their cash and make sure that they can make it stretch out for as long as possible and resist borrowing if possible, although interest rates are unlikely to rise in this environment.
Can we resist borrowing, gentlemen? Dumsani?
Well,
Can we resist temptation overall as South Africans?
Well, first, for you to borrow, you must have something to pay back that which you are borrowing. So I'm not sure if we can go on borrowing. But just to add the point that he's making, you see, the problem of this country is political leadership in terms of the management of the economy.
Yeah.
We accept that we may not be in control of the economy, but the political management of the economy is far much more important than the figures tell.
Levi, one word.
Well, it's difficult not to spend and to borrow, but I think in South Africa we need strong leadership that will be able to save our economy.
Mr. Mavuso, your final word, sir.
Well, this recession, it may be termed technical, but it has got a potential of being quite worse and being the real recession. However, our political leadership now needs to put petty politics aside and begin to work for this country by coming up with policies, economic policies that will make this country a success.
All right, so you say we need to save and save and save, Doctor.
Well, yes, you save up to a point and then you need to start spending. But right now you need to save.
Doctor, thank you so much for joining us and giving us that sound analysis. Dr. Ezra German, the chief economist at Econometrics, giving us an in-depth analysis on how the recession will actually affect the country. And of course, my studio guests were Mr. Dumisani Hlophe, Mr. Levi Ndoyen out in Pretoria, Mr. Joe Mavuso, all giving us sound analysis of the news that gripped the headlines this week. Thank you for joining us here on Media Monitor. We're back with AM News on top of the hour. Stay tuned for that.